Iowa State just released their 2026 recruiting class, and Matt Campbell did find a few gems, but he also had a few tricks up his sleeve to put Iowa State in the best position possible for next season.
You are Locked On Cyclones, your daily podcast on the Iowa State Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now the #1 sports podcast network. I'm your host, Nick Marovets. Thank you for making this your first watch or listen of the day. I appreciate it more than you know. Be sure to hit subscribe down below so we can prove that it is, in fact, a Cyclone state. We're starting today with the football 2026 recruiting class. We're going to take a look at a few guys. Yes, not the entire class individually, but a few guys for sure. And we'll see how Matt Campbell kind of approached this from a philosophy standpoint and how he ranks against the Big 12 and against all of college football. Then in the second segment, we're going to pivot. We're going to stay on topic a little bit. I feel like it's a little ahead of schedule since the transfer portal is still a ways away. We have yet another game to play, but I'm going to go ahead and give my thoughts on the transfer portal and how Iowa State should attack it this offseason. Then to round out today's show, you read that correctly because I had to double check. 132 points against Alcorn State. I wasn't going to talk about it, but we have to recap it. I genuinely cannot wait. I cannot wait till the end of today's show. So stick around for that. Before we get that far, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. We're going to go ahead and start with the 2026 recruiting class for Iowa State. And I think I'm just going to go ahead and start with the numbers, okay? Kind of the rankings, just to give you a frame of reference of where Iowa State is at. Because as I mentioned, I am not going to go through every single recruit right now, maybe in due time. But at least right now, we're not doing that. Iowa State comes in at 9th in the Big 12 and 50th in all of college football. For some frame of reference, Iowa State came in at 55 last season and the year prior. This is looking like it will probably be Matt Campbell's highest ranked recruiting class, which I feel pretty good about. It's not a huge difference from last year. I do think we're starting to see kind of that upswing. We're starting to see a little bit of a change in how Iowa State is perceived, which I have talked about, honestly, for basically the entirety of this show, because I feel like Iowa State, for the entirety of this show, has been changing the narrative. They've been kind of becoming one of those better teams in college football and college basketball, just as a university. And so it's exciting to see that reflected in the recruiting, because how many times have we had a show where I say, this is going to help recruiting, or this is going to help recruiting, or this is going to help recruiting? At some point, I was like, dude, I want to see it. And we're seeing it right here. So that is definitely exciting. Matt Campbell had some media availability this week and talked about a few guys in particular. So there were two names that he brought up that I really wanted to kind of highlight. Elijah Reeder is number one. Hidden gem from New Jersey, defensive lineman, 6'6", 210, had 50 tackles, 19 tackles for loss, and 8 sacks as a senior at what looks like Central Regional High School. Shout out to Elijah Reeder. The reason that we're talking about him is because he got his offer from Iowa State extremely late, like the day before signing day, extremely late. And Iowa State was the only one to offer him, to my knowledge. So if I'm incorrect in that, I'm incorrect in that. But the point is, when Matt Campbell was talking about that on the podium, he was saying that they waited as long as they possibly could just to keep other teams off of Elijah Reeder's radar. Or just to keep Elijah Reeder off of other teams' radar, maybe is the better way to put it. Elijah Reeder was able to go wherever he wanted, but other schools just hadn't found out about him. And the first thing that jumped in my mind when Matt Campbell was telling this story, which I found to be quite transparent, and I thought was really kind of cool of Campbell to talk about, was the Jet Tamala flip, if you will, from this summer, when Jet Tamala out of Nebraska, and Iowa State still killed it in the Nebraska pipeline, if you will, but out of Nebraska, decides to come to Iowa State, and then Alabama basically is like, oh, wait, who is that? Let's watch some tape. Yeah, I like what this kid's about. Well, how would you like to come to Alabama instead? And nothing against Jet Tamala, but he goes, yeah, I think I'd rather go to Alabama than Iowa State. And so we lose Jet Tamala. Now, I'm not saying nobody would have ever found Jet Tamala, okay? I'm just saying that it feels like there is a parallel there, and Matt Campbell's now forced he's always been forced into this position, but we're seeing it in real time, that he's kind of got to figure out how he's going to play the game. Are you going to be the first one in the door and just like essentially force yourself as like this is where you want to go? Everyone else is not on you yet. We were the first on, kind of the talent that you have, whatever. Or do you hope and play your cards the right way where nobody finds this kid at the end of a recruiting cycle? You're like, all right, we're going to hold off till the day before so nobody else really gets a chance to take a look at this film and just really give ourselves the best chance. I think is probably the nicest way to say that. And I just found that to be quite interesting, a little bit of an insight into what Matt Campbell has to deal with, because I was doing some thinking on this, and this will come up during the transfer portal talk too, but like Ames, Iowa is not by most accounts a travel destination. Okay. I love Ames, Iowa. Ames is probably my favorite town on the planet. Although right now with the whole winter situation, it does have me kind of like maybe there's a tropical. Is there an Ames in like Florida? Can we do that? Because it's pretty cold right now. It's like negative when I woke up this morning. So not a huge fan of that, but I love Ames. I can see where there are players that are like, Miami, SoCal, like all of these other warmer locations, Texas. I think I'd rather go there and not have to wake up in below zero weather and scrape off my car and get to morning practice or morning lift or whatever. I can definitely see where players where Iowa State is already fighting players from that aspect. And then you factor in the money, like Alabama versus Iowa State money and facilities. I don't think those are really in the same category. So Iowa State is in a tough position, played their cards the right way to grab Elijah Reeder. Honestly, I think that'll be a huge get for Iowa State. The other name that's, I think, worth bringing up because of the way that Matt Campbell talked about him, specifically one comment, Jeffrey Roberts out of Ames, Iowa, went to Dowling Catholic, just won the state title this season with them. So shout out to Dowling Catholic for that. The reason I bring him up, he's a 6 foot, 180-pound wide receiver. And Matt Campbell said he reminds him of Jalen Knoll. Now, I'm not going to say that he's filling in, like he's the next Jalen Knoll, or that he's the next, wide receiver 2-3 on the Houston Texans. Not what I'm saying. But it is worth noting that Matt Campbell kind of saw elements of Knoll's game in Roberts, in Jeffrey. And I think it shows that, Matt Campbell's going to recruit OKGs, our kind of guys. Even if it doesn't, necessarily equate 1-to-1 in the physical department, I'm guessing that Matt Campbell saw a little bit of Jalen Knoll in the mental side of Jeffrey Roberts. And I think that that's probably more so what Matt Campbell's looking for. That's a little bit more important to him, if I had to guess. So that I think that's a really good sign. I think that Matt Campbell, when he went about this recruiting class, did it the right way. Everybody knows this, but Matt Campbell essentially is an OKG recruiter. And then the talent is obviously there for all of these guys, but like the heights and the weights and all of that can be changed. They can be melded throughout these 4 years. The talent even, or the skill level will be melded. They'll become better throughout the 4 years. So really impressed with, honestly, the sheer talent that Matt Campbell was able to grab within staying within that OKG's kind of framework. Very, very solid class when I perused over this. We also did Iowa State grabbed Zach Eskelson. If you go and look through the whole list yourself, it's definitely worth your time. But Zach Eskelson, brother of Brett, is a preferred walk-on per the Iowa State website. So we'll look out for a brotherly rivalry there. And Matt Campbell said he's like, I love having brothers on the team. I imagine I'm just calling it right now. We're not even done with this season, but we'll probably see a breakout from Brett next season. I think that this will be big in the Eskelson household, but also in the wide receiver room for Iowa State. That being said, let's go ahead and kind of attack the philosophy approach as far as Iowa State and the transfer portal. That's coming up right here after this. But first, our friends over at Aura Frames. The holidays are officially here, which means gift hunting season is on. And if you want something meaningful, personal, and guaranteed to get a reaction, Aura Frames is the gift that delivers on every time. It's not just something you wrap. It's a way to share memories, because Aura isn't your average picture frame. You can preload the frame with photos before getting it. So when they plug it in, the memories are already there. No apps to figure it out. no setup headaches, just instant smiles. This is perfect for anyone who loves photos. So don't show this to my girlfriend because I might just have to grab one myself. Packaging comes gift ready, no price tag, no wrapping needed. Huge win. It's a holiday gift that actually gets used. It's not forgotten in a drawer. For a limited time, save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com to get $35 off Aura's best-selling Carver Mat frames, named #1 by Wirecutter, by using promo code COLLEGE at checkout. That's AURAFrames.com, promo code COLLEGE. This deal is exclusive to listeners, and frames sell out fast. So order yours now to get it in time for the holidays. Support the show by mentioning us at checkout. Terms and conditions apply. So we move from actual facts and numbers and how Iowa State has performed this last recruiting cycle to kind of philosophy, how I want Iowa State to attack the transfer portal here at Locked On Cyclones, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I start this off by saying that I've had this sticky note on my desk, really, for a few weeks. And it's kind of surprising that it hasn't just randomly been tossed. But it reads, does Iowa State need, and then need is underlined, to target stars in the portal? The way I'm reading this, because it has been a few weeks since I've written this, is it mandatory for Iowa State to grab stars in the portal as opposed to kind of how they've approached the portal in the past few years? And to answer that question, I'm going to say no. Okay. I don't think it's necessary. It's absolutely like you have to grab stars in the portal if you're Iowa State, especially this offseason. And I want to say this really quick because I've said this before. I want to make sure it's reiterated. I know this is a little bit ahead of schedule. We've still got like a whole month before the transfer portal opens. This is just on topic for today. So I'm just going to kind of yap about it. The reason I say I don't think they do, for one, I think Iowa State was in way more games than they probably should have been this season. And had they stayed healthy, we really could have been looking at maybe a 2-loss Iowa State team. I don't know if I'd go so far as a 1-loss just because it feels like, it's just really hard to make that jump. But I do think that Iowa State was very, very close to having a phenomenal season. It just, the wheels kind of fell off in the middle and they were able to piece it back together. So I don't think Iowa State is that far off. I don't think that they have a huge jump that they need to make to be like a Big 12 contender. I don't think you need, 3 5-star wide receivers and a 5-star quarterback and a 5-star, entire offensive line to get over that lump or that hump, if you will. Like I think they're a lot closer than that. I even would say that they don't probably need to bring in any 5 stars from the portal. Of course, it would help, but I think that they're right there they're very, very close to getting that job done. And then for 2, I don't know if you can retain a lot of the roster that you have if you're Iowa State, especially with the payroll that they have. If you bring in one of those ridiculously talented, wide receivers or running backs or, even court, like what position would Iowa State bring in a guy like that at? Because I feel like Iowa State has dudes at just about every single position. So where are you willing to sacrifice a significant portion of your bankroll for what? A marginal gain? That's really what it is for me. The risk, or it's not even a risk, the trade-off of what you're paying a player and then the actual increase in talent at a position, I feel like is just not there. I'm okay with Iowa State kind of sticking with the younger guys who can develop within the system approach. It's totally okay to go out and get a guy who's like, it's like in the NFL, like grabbing a veteran versus a guy in the draft. Like grabbing a veteran, knows how the system works, knows how the NFL works, knows how to take care of himself, how it's, all of those kinds of things, has proven himself at the NFL level versus a rookie who is still is going to be great, like, or at least in theory is, and we just have to develop them. That's the difference, I feel like, in the 2 players. And I would say that Iowa State is totally fine, at least how I view it, in taking those younger guys who can develop. And one of the points that I wanted to bring up is Iowa State is going to lose guys to the portal. I think that their retention rate will be higher than other, schools, even in the Big 12 or across college football. But I would say that Iowa State's going to lose guys. And sticking with this essentially development plan in the portal allows Iowa State to bring back the same class that they just lost, right? So if you lose, 10 sophomores, let's say, hypothetically speaking, Iowa State then isn't forced into a position where they have to spend a bunch of money on some junior or senior star player. They can kind of fill the holes that they just lost. They can fill in, that same age, that same position group, whatever, and they're not going to be hurting as bad in a few years because they could find themselves in a situation where you lost a bunch of players to the portal, and then in your portal, instead of addressing that, you kind of went for win now, right? You went a little bit of LA Rams style. Let's just spend a bunch of money and win right now. And then in 2 years, you don't have anybody left from that class. All of those guys graduated, and you don't have any real underclassmen because when they left, you just filled in the upperclassmen to win now, which is great. And it's honestly a little bit of a gamble. You become, in my opinion, probably a little bit more of a transfer portal team. You can definitely start to recruit a little bit better if you see success from having the great success of the transfer portal. But I think it's really, really risky. And I'm totally okay with Matt Campbell bringing in OKGs, not only in recruiting from high school, but also in the transfer portal, making sure that they're the right kind of player. They're an Iowa State guy, if you will, an OKG, our kind of guy, as opposed to just extremely talented who's going to ask for a ton of money and honestly is going to ruin the system that Iowa State has. That's I think where Iowa State is strongest. And it's proving that it's the way that these last few years have kind of gone. I feel like Iowa State's system is proving that it works. We're seeing that like the retention is there and the talent curve is increasing. Now this season, I would say is maybe it's not a step up, but it's not a step down either. I don't think Iowa State regressed this season. And the fact that they didn't when they lost 2 all-star, 1,000-yard NFL caliber wide receivers, that feels like a win to me, especially when you consider how much they lost on the defensive side of the ball. So sticking with what Matt Campbell knows, sticking with what Matt Campbell is about, I think is going to prove beneficial for Iowa State in the long run. And I absolutely trust, that kind of, it's not conventional. That's the thing. That's why we're talking about this is not super conventional. And obviously Matt Campbell's going to go out and grab the best talent that he can, but it's the best talent that fits the mold, right? He's not going to look for just anybody that fits the mold. He's obviously going to look for the best talents, but only the best talents that fit the Iowa State way. And I think that's really important. I think that's one of the benefits to having Matt Campbell as a coach is he's absolutely going to run the program his way and make sure that everyone that's in the program has actually, it fits the mold, essentially, is the best way to say it. That being said, we're going to pivot away from football. We're going to move into basketball because I cannot believe Iowa State had a phenomenal night against Alcorn State. So stick around. We're going to talk about that coming up right here after this. But first, FanDuel, NFL Sundays move fast. One big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's where making live betting on FanDuel, it's so exciting. It's so thrilling. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds, every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift. A receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, or the momentum flips after a turnover. FanDuel lets you jump in to the moment with live spreads and money lines that adjust instantly. Player props update as guys heat up. And you could bet next touchdown scores, drive results totals, and all sorts of more at FanDuel. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. All right, time to pivot to last night's game, Iowa State, Alcorn State. Look, I know I said we weren't going to talk about this, okay? Yesterday, I said this. I gave my prediction here at Locked On Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, now the #1 sports podcast network. I gave my prediction of Alcorn State, I think I said 58, and Iowa State was 103, I think was what my prediction was. And I wasn't going to talk about it because I said, this is a game that Iowa State should dominate in. We'll maybe talk about a few things, but we're not going to make any huge conclusions from this. And I'm going to try my best not to. But when I turned on the game and I watched what Iowa State did, it was impossible not to immediately pencil this in for today's show. Like it wasn't in my blood to ignore the 132-point thrashing that Iowa State imposed upon Alcorn State. The poor Braves, who are now 1-9, just did not deserve that. That Iowa State scored a record number of points. I saw the 132 at the end of the game, and I just, first off, I sat there in a little bit of disbelief for a while, but then I started to think, like, has Iowa State ever even scored that many points? Like, that feels like an NBA score. That is an unrealistic number of points, 132. And based on this article, I suppose, from Iowa State, that is a school record. 132 points is a school record. 65 first half points, the second most in an opening period. And they shot the ball lights out. Iowa State, just unbelievable. I mean, I could not believe it when I looked at the actual box score. I'm sure every one of you is aware. Milan started this game 8 for 8 from beyond the arc. 8 for 8. I mean, Milan ended with 27 points. And he had 24 points from beyond the arc because he went 8 for 8. What's 8 times 3? 8, 16, 24. Unreal. Simply unimaginable. I'm looking at this shocked. He had one free throw and he had 27 points. Unreal. Milan obviously got extremely hot. Joshua Jefferson had 24. Nate Heise did not miss from the field. I guess he did miss his free throws, which is what it is, but he went 5 of 5 from the floor, 3 of 3 from beyond the arc. So hopefully we found that Nate Heise. That was one of the hopes that I had going into this game, was that Nate Heise might get a little bit of time, start to feel himself a little bit. And it looks like, at 3 for 3 from beyond the arc, that's a really good clip. Very good for Nate Heise, of course. Everybody's going to have those nights where they're just on, and I think it's important that he feels that early. Killian Torrey, the guy that we just got done talking so glowingly about, ended with 13. Nate Heise also had 13, and Blake had 6. Those are your starters for this game. Coming off the bench, Jamarian Bateman had 26. Look out. Look out for Jamarian Bateman. Cade Kelderman added 7. Dominicus Plata had 12, and Eric Mulder had 4. There's not a ton, really, honestly. Like I said, I'm trying to stay as impartial to this particular game as I can, but 132 points is pretty hard to ignore. I mean, that's unreal. Yeah, you held Alcorn State to like 68, which is honestly not great. I'm sure there will be people who point to that and say, well, they gave up 68 to Alcorn State, which is, I mean, it's not like nothing. It's definitely more points than 67. Great. But like they scored 58 against Louisiana Tech. I guess they did score 81 against Indiana State. They scored 64 against Howard. So maybe it's not as bad as people would paint it out to be. Like they only scored 50 against Minnesota, 64 against Maryland. So I could see where people would say like 68. Oh, maybe that's just not Iowa State playing their best defense. But I do think a little bit of this came down to, it felt like a pickup game. You're literally up by, they led by as much as 66, I believe was what I read. That's not even, they won by 64. They led by as much as 66, 5th best in school history. That's like playing with the sliders all the way in your favor. Iowa State shot 45 of 65 from the field, 70%, second best. And I think they shot 22 of 30 from beyond the arc was what I think the number I saw was. I'm pulling it up right now. 22 of 30, 73%. They shot 71% from the field, 73% from beyond the arc, and 75% from the line. When you shoot that well, I don't even know, like, I cannot blame them for losing focus. That's going to feel like it's not even a real game. Like you're playing on just easy mode, rookie mode. Do you ever go play rookie mode on like Madden or college football? If you throw a pick, you're like, all right, whatever. We're just going to go down and shoot a 3 and make it. We're just going to go ahead and throw it up to third string wide receiver, and it's going to be a touchdown because it's rookie mode. Like, it doesn't matter. I can see where and I'm not saying that this is the right mentality. It's not what I'm saying at all. And we'll talk about mentality tomorrow from this game. But I can see where, Iowa State had like 14 turnovers, and I'm not even going to look at that. I don't even care. I really don't care. I'm not going to look at, like, honestly, even the rebounding numbers. What is this? 18 to 32. They dominated. But I don't even care. Like, that's one of those games where you're going to shoot 70%, and it's honestly, I did see this tweet. It's like, I feel like it'd be cool if they could save some of these for Purdue. That'd be great. But sometimes the other team's going to shoot like that, and you're just going to have to live with it. I didn't play a ton of basketball, but I remember a team that we played shot like probably about 70, 60%, just a ridiculous, everything was going in kind of night. And our coach was like, I don't know if this is the right thing to say, but he was just like, sometimes that's going to happen. Like, sometimes you're going to play great defense and they're just going to make everything. And if you're not making everything, it's not going to be a close game. Like, it's just going to get out of hand because they are making them at such a ridiculous rate. That's what Iowa State was on last night. And that's why I did want to not, I wanted to not make any conclusions from this. I wanted to just kind of like treat this as a one-off. This is going to look great on KenPom. This is going to look great in a lot of different like rankings, and what I think this does show what Iowa State is capable of. But I wouldn't go into any game expecting Milan to go 8 of 8. He broke a school record for most threes in the game, and he didn't miss until that point. That's literally, it's unheard of, right? I wouldn't expect every night that Joshua Jefferson goes 10 of 13 for 24 points. I'm not expecting that. He had 2 threes. Like, I'm not going into games expecting Nate Heisey to not miss from beyond the arc. So this isn't the new norm for Iowa State. I'm not saying that Iowa State should register with the NBA to become a pro team and score 130 points a night. But I do think that this shows that Iowa State is there. And as tough as they are defensively, they can score. That's the bright side. That's how I'm choosing to look at this. Like I said, I'm honestly going to try to ignore basically everything from this game. And that was what I was trying to do before this game. Like, I didn't care if they won by 64. I didn't care if they won by 64 or if they won by like 20. Like, I was going to kind of try to write this one off. I didn't really even want to talk about it. Honestly, I thought it would be just kind of a moot point. We'll move on to Purdue. But nonetheless, Iowa State forced me to talk about it. It's like Matt Campbell forced me to play you. They forced me to talk about it. 132 points. And I think the biggest takeaway is their defense is very, very good. And we've seen it against good teams, right? Against St. John's, against Creighton, against Syracuse, especially recently. And I would say Mississippi State as well. We've seen them play phenomenal defense, tough, hard defense, but they can score. They can score 132 points. The scoreboard starts to look weird once you've scored 100, and then they scored 32 more. That's unreal. And they scored 60 in the second half against Syracuse. So they scored 192 points in their last 6 quarters. Offensively, Iowa State has found something very good that they found it right now going into Purdue, because we're going to talk about that tomorrow. But that's going to be a tough matchup for Iowa State. And it's going to be very telling how they kind of go from this game into that Boilermaker game. I can't wait. That one's going to be must-watch TV. So thank you for making this your must-watch first listen of the day. You guys are the best. Be sure to hit subscribe down below. It's completely free. Helps us prove that it is, in fact, a Cyclone state. That being said, until next time, Cyclone fans, sayonara.